I never meant to build an empire. It started as a way to cope with loneliness when my husband Michael's 80-hour work weeks as a corporate lawyer left me alone in our two-big house in Boston's affluent Beacon Hill neighborhood. What began with handmade jewelry sold on Etsy transformed into something none of them saw coming, especially not my mother-in-law, Patricia Wellington, who never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was beneath her precious son. "Another craft fair, dear?" she would say at our monthly family dinners, her voice dripping with condescension. How quaint. If only she knew that my little craft business had just shipped its millionth order last week. If only my husband knew that while he was billing $800 an hour to make partner, I was building a brand that would soon be worth more than his entire law firm. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Emily Chen Wellington, and 5 years ago, I was just a graphic designer who fell in love with a lawyer from an old-money Boston family. The Wellingtons traced their lineage back to the Mayflower and never let anyone forget it. When Michael proposed, his mother took me aside and said, "At least you're Chinese. That's almost acceptable these days. Your children will be good at math." I should have run then. Instead, I smiled and endured like I had been taught. Like my immigrant parents had done when they first came to America. Keep your head down, work hard, and success will follow. The idea for Lux Craft started during those lonely nights. I combined my graphic design skills with traditional Chinese craft techniques my grandmother had taught me, creating modern jewelry with an Asian fusion twist. My first piece, a delicate jade pendant wrapped in silver wire with a contemporary geometric design, sold within hours of listing it on Etsy. "That's nice, honey," Michael said when I told him, barely looking up from his case files. "But maybe focus on redecorating the house. The partners are coming for dinner next month." I did focus on the house by converting our 3-car garage into a studio. While Michael climbed the corporate ladder and Patricia planned charity galas, I was building something revolutionary. My designs caught the attention of fashion bloggers, then magazines, then celebrities. Orders poured in faster than I could fulfill them. I hired other immigrant women from my mother's church to help with production. Many of them, like Mrs. Zhang and Mrs. Kim, had been engineers and artists in their home countries, but couldn't find work in America. Together, we created a production system that maintained handcrafted quality while scaling up operations. I took online business courses at night, learning about supply chains, marketing, and e-commerce. My little Etsy shop evolved into luxcraft.com. We expanded from jewelry to handbags, then to home decor. Each piece told a story, blending Eastern craftsmanship with Western design. Our waiting lists grew longer. Venture capitalists started calling. But at home, nothing changed. Michael was too busy to notice that I'd stopped using his credit cards. Patricia still introduced me at parties as Michael's wife who does crafts. My father-in-law, Judge Wellington, still called me the artist in that tone that made it sound like a mental condition. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Patricia had organized a special family gathering at her Beacon Hill mansion. All the Wellingtons would be there, including Michael's siblings with their properly employed spouses, doctors, lawyers, and investment bankers all. I arrived late because we had just closed a deal to supply our products to a major luxury department store chain. Michael was already there, deep in conversation with his brother about their latest cases. "Emily, darling, we were just talking about you," Patricia called out as I entered the formal dining room. 20 pairs of Wellington eyes turned to me. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used when discussing the help. "Patricia was telling us about your little online shop," Michael's sister-in-law Amanda said, adjusting her Hermes scarf. "How enterprising are you?" I took my seat, noticing the subtle way Patricia had arranged the table, placing me at the far end, away from the important conversations. The catering staff served the first course. Imported caviar on mother-of-pearl spoons. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I ignored it. Another message from the Amazon acquisition team could wait. "You know," Patricia announced, tapping her crystal glass for attention, "I've been thinking about what's best for the Wellington name. Michael's making partner this year, finally entering the family tradition of real achievement." Michael beamed. I took a sip of wine. "Which is why," she continued, fixing me with her society smile, "we need to discuss Emily's hobby." The word hung in the air like a poisoned arrow. I felt my cheeks flush as Patricia launched into her carefully prepared speech. A Wellington spouse has certain obligations, certain standards to uphold. We're not ordinary people who need to sell trinkets online. Michael, darling, don't you think it's time Emily focused on more appropriate activities? The hospital board has an opening. My phone buzzed again. And again, and again. Mother's right, Michael said, loosening his Hermes tie. I make more than enough for both of us. This crafts thing. It's a bit embarrassing at this level of society. The buzzing wouldn't stop. As the Wellingtons nodded in collective agreement about my social failings, I finally pulled out my phone. 10 missed calls from my lawyer, 5 from my investment banker, and 1 message that would wipe those condescending smiles off every Wellington face. URGENT, Amazon final offer, $80 million cash plus stock. Need answer tonight. I looked up from my phone to see Patricia frowning at my breach of dinner etiquette. If only she knew what was coming. As Patricia continued her lecture about appropriate activities for a Wellington spouse, I felt a strange calm settle over me. 5 years of condescension, of being treated like a charity case who got lucky enough to marry into their precious family, it was about to end. Emily, are you even listening? Patricia's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. This is important. The Wellington name. We'll be just fine, I interrupted, standing up. Every head at the table turned. I had never interrupted Patricia before. In fact, I'd say it's about to become much more valuable. Michael frowned. Emily, don't be dramatic. Mother's only trying to help. Actually, I said, my voice steady. I have an announcement of my own. I turned to face Patricia directly. You're right. It's time to discuss my little hobby. I pulled up the email on my phone and began reading. Dear Mrs. Chen Wellington, following our final evaluation, Amazon is pleased to present our best and final offer for the acquisition of Lux Craft Incorporated. $80 million in cash, plus $20 million in Amazon stock options, with a 3-year earnout potential of an additional $50 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's fork clattered onto his $400 dinner plate. That's impossible, Patricia whispered, her face pale. Your little online craft shop generated $42 million in revenue last year. I continued, warming to my task. We have partnerships with Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, and Neiman Marcus. Our waiting list for custom pieces is 6 months long. Oh, and that charitable donation you were bragging about earlier, Patricia? The one where you gave $50,000 to the Asian American Arts Foundation. That was actually from me. I'm the largest anonymous donor. Judge Wellington's bushy eyebrows shot up. You're saying your craft business is worth $100 million? No, I smiled, checking my phone again. According to this new message, Google just countered Amazon's offer. Now it's worth $120 million. Michael stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. But I'm the breadwinner. I make 7 figures. And I make that in a month, I replied calmly. Those nights you thought I was playing with beads, I was building an empire. While you were billing hours, I created jobs for over 200 women, mostly immigrants who couldn't get proper jobs despite having advanced degrees. Amanda's Hermes scarf suddenly looked a bit tight around her neck. But you never said anything. Would you have believed me? I asked, looking around the table. Would any of you have taken me seriously? You were all so convinced that making partner at a law firm was the height of achievement. Patricia had recovered enough to attempt damage control. Well, this is wonderful news. I always said Emily had potential. No, I cut her off again. You always said I was embarrassing, that I was beneath your son, that my little hobby was a shame to the Wellington name. I turned to my husband. And you, Michael? When was the last time you asked me about my work? When was the last time you came to see what I was building in that garage you complained about me wasting? The room spun with tension as years of unspoken resentment finally found voice. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out one more piece of paper from my purse. Something I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. There's one more thing, I said, sliding the document across the table to Michael. I've been so busy with the acquisition negotiations, I almost forgot to mention it. These came from my lawyer last week. Michael picked up the papers, his hands trembling slightly. His face went from red to white as he read the title. Petition for divorce. But why? He stammered. We can work this out. Now that I know about the money. That's exactly why, I replied, gathering my things. 5 years, Michael. 5 years of dismissing me, belittling my work, treating me like a charity case. 5 years of watching your mother tear me down while you smiled and nodded. The money isn't why I'm leaving. It's just what finally gave me the courage to do it. I turned to address the entire stunned table. Oh, and Patricia, remember last month when you said the Wellingtons only wear real jewelry, not craft fair trinkets? That necklace you're wearing, the one you bragged about buying at Tiffany's, it's one of mine. Tiffany's is our biggest wholesale client. Patricia's hand flew to her throat, touching the $12,000 necklace she'd shown off all evening. I could practically see her mentally reviewing all the compliments she'd received on her exquisite taste. As I walked toward the door, Judge Wellington finally found his voice. Now see here, young lady, you can't just. Actually, I can, I said, pausing at the threshold. And one more thing, Michael, remember how you always insisted I sign a prenup to protect the Wellington family fortune? You might want to read Clause 7.3, the one about how all business assets developed during the marriage are considered joint property unless specifically excluded. Michael's face went from white to green. I smiled. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your law firm partnership, but I thought you should know, technically you own half of my company. Well, you did. I sold your shares to my employees last week for $1. They earned it. The explosion of voices behind me as I walked out was music to my ears. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of their education about underestimating the wrong person. The media explosion hit the next morning. Immigrant woman's craft business sells for $120 million, made headlines across every major business publication. My phone rang nonstop with journalists wanting to know how a simple crafter had built such an empire right under Boston society's nose. But the real drama was unfolding in the Wellington family group chat, which I hadn't yet been removed from. Patricia, she's ruined us. Everyone at the club is talking. Amanda, my friends are asking if I can introduce them to Emily for business advice. Michael, mother, please calm down. My colleagues are congratulating me on my entrepreneurial wife. Judge Wellington, some yuani explain how we Mercedes. I smiled, switching off my phone as I walked into Luxcraft's headquarters, a renovated textile mill in Cambridge that employed over 200 people, mostly immigrant women like my mother. Mrs. Zhang, my first hire and now chief operating officer, met me at the door. The acquisition team from Google is here, she said with a knowing smile, and you won't believe who else is in the lobby. I rounded the corner to find Patricia Wellington pacing nervously, clutching her Luxcraft necklace. She froze when she saw me. Emily dear, she began, her society smile strained. I've been doing some thinking about last night. Mrs. Wellington, I interrupted politely, you'll need to schedule an appointment with my assistant. I have a meeting with Google's executive team right now. But we're family, she protested. Are we? I raised an eyebrow. Last night you made it very clear that I wasn't Wellington material. Now, if you'll excuse me. I walked past her into our main conference room, where Google's top brass waited. Through the glass walls, I watched Patricia's face as she realized that the craft hobby she dismissed was being courted by tech giants. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Google's offer beat Amazon's, closing at $150 million with the earnout potential. The story went viral. Immigrant woman builds $1 million empire while her blue blood in-laws mock her hobby. Every major network wanted an interview. Michael's law firm colleagues started referring their wives to Luxcraft for trunk shows. The same society women who had snubbed me at Patricia's parties now called daily, hoping to invest in my next venture. But the sweetest moment came during the acquisition closing dinner. Google had rented out the same exclusive restaurant where the Wellingtons had once made me feel like an outsider. As I stood to give my speech, I saw Michael and his family slinking in through the side door. They'd obviously pulled strings to be there. 5 years ago, someone told me that craft fairs weren't appropriate for certain levels of society. That immigrant women should know their place. That success meant following traditional paths. Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. But my mother taught me something different, she said. Success isn't about fitting into someone else's world, it's about building your own. I gestured to the immigrant women who now held executive positions at Luxcraft. Together, we didn't just build a company, We built a community. We proved that craft fairs can become empires, that hobbies can change lives, and that sometimes the people who dismiss you are the ones who end up watching you soar. The room erupted in applause. From the corner of my eye, I saw Patricia dab at tears, while Michael stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. After the dinner, Mrs. John approached me with news that made my victory complete. Our immigrant employment program had been selected for a prestigious innovation award. The presenter? The Wellington Foundation for Social Progress. Patricia's pet project. They'll have to give an award to the very people they look down on. Mrs. John laughed. Karma is real. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Michael tried everything to win me back, suddenly fascinated by my entrepreneurial spirit. But as I told the divorce court, some bridges can't be unburned. I bought a penthouse in Back Bay, right next door to Patricia's beloved social club. Every morning, I watch her society friends line up at the Lux Craft flagship store across the street, bragging about their personal connection to the founder. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Michael's law firm's Women's Leadership Conference. The topic? Breaking Through. How to Succeed When Others Doubt You. I declined. I was too busy launching our new foundation, which provides seed funding to immigrant women entrepreneurs. The final twist of the knife came yesterday. Patricia's Country Club, the one that had taken decades for the Wellingtons to get into, invited me to join as an honorary member. I accepted with one condition, that they also offer membership to Mrs. Zhang and our other immigrant executives. But that's not how things are done. The membership committee sputtered. Then perhaps it's time things changed, I replied. They agreed. This morning, I had coffee at the club, sitting at the best table, the one Patricia had always claimed as her territory. As I sipped my latte, I opened an email from a young immigrant woman who'd read about my story. You showed me that our dreams don't have to fit into someone else's box, that we can build our own tables when they won't give us a seat at theirs. Thank you for proving them wrong. I looked around the club at the society women who now competed for my attention, at the old money that now eagerly sought new ideas. Patricia was there too, sitting in a corner, watching as her former social circle gravitated toward my table. She caught my eye and gave a small, defeated nod. Finally, she understood. The very things they had mocked, my heritage, my creativity, my little hobby, had become their obsession. I nodded back, then returned to my coffee. Success, after all, is the best revenge. But changing the game? That's priceless. My phone buzzed. Another interview request, this time from Forbes. They wanted to feature me in their Self-Made Women issue. The suggested title made me smile. The Craft Queen of Boston. How an immigrant's hobby disrupted high society and built a $150 million empire. Sometimes I thought the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so high that they have to look up to see you. And sometimes the people who dismiss your dreams end up having to watch them come true, from a distance, through the windows of the empire they never believed you could build.